Okay, great. Then I think we can start. I think most people are seated. Great. So welcome everyone to today's event on German weapons, German money. What purpose does the German state have in unconditionally supporting Israel, the Israeli state, and the ongoing genocide in Gaza? As most of you know, the Palestine Congress, or Palestine Conference, Palästina Kongress, was stormed by the police and banned on the 12th of April. The Palestine Solidarity Movement in Germany is faced with extreme repressions and criminalization. Just 2 days ago, there was a Palästina Kongress in exile, where the German authorities banned one of the speakers from speaking in Germany. He spoke nonetheless. They legitimized this by saying that he poses a threat to civil society and banned him from speaking in Germany. He is not in Germany. He was speaking online, so it's a bit ironic, but nonetheless, we are not allowing ourselves to be silenced from these intimidation measures. At our last event that we did a couple weeks ago, the police showed up and said that they would become active if they saw that we're doing a live stream. So we see the absurdity of these repressions, and today we're here to talk specifically about those things that the German state doesn't want us to talk about, specifically what interests it has in supporting genocide and supporting the Israeli military. That's why I'm very honored to have two amazing speakers with us today. For one, Dimitra Andrițu, who is from Forensic Architecture and Forensis, who are doing amazing work showing what the Israeli military is doing in Gaza. We also have Claudio Feliciani with us, who's from Stop Arming Israel and very active here in Berlin in the pro-Palestine movement. So without further ado, I'd like to give the word to Dimitra, and then after that Claudio, and then we'll have the possibility for discussion afterwards. Thank you all.
Hi everyone, thank you for the introduction, and it's very nice to be here, despite all the conditions that Helen described in terms of repression of pro-Palestinian solidarity in Berlin. I'm Dimitra, I'm a researcher at Forensis, the Berlin-based organization Forensic Architecture. And we are a non-profit organization, and we conduct investigations with and on behalf of communities affected by state and corporate violence, supporting their demands for justice, accountability, and reparations. Like Helen described, we have since now 13 years that Forensic Architecture was founded in London. We have also one of our focus areas has always been Palestine, and we have conducted a lot of investigations over the past years into various aspects of the Israeli military occupation, the apartheid, and of course also in the context of the ongoing genocidal campaign in Gaza. Today I'm going to speak about a recent investigation that we conducted in collaboration with Palestine Speaks Berlin and Fight for Palestine and other independent researchers into German arms exports to Israel. So we studied past, present and current and potential future arms export licenses from Germany to Israel, and it was done specifically, and I will speak more about it, to support also an urgent application filed by a Berlin-based lawyers collective and supported by the European Legal Support Center, ELSE, Law for Palestine, and other initiatives to stop the export of war weapons from Germany to Israel. We can also speak later a bit more about the kind of current status of these applications. But first I want to present to you more about the outcomes of our research, and essentially it's more presenting the information that we have collected throughout this investigation. As of 24th of July, at least 39,145 Palestinian people have been killed since the start of Israel's major military assault on Gaza in October 2023. While many of you may have seen that there is also a recent study from the medical journal Lancet that suggests that actually the number of direct and indirect deaths may well exceed almost 5 times this number. May well be at least 186,000 people. And of course, these are not just numbers, these are people with history and a stolen future. More than 60% of those who have been identified have been women, children, and elderly people. At least 90,000 Palestinians have been injured, and thousands more are missing under the rubble. Israel's relentless, indiscriminate bombardment and siege of Gaza has created an unprecedented humanitarian catastrophe. With more than 1 million people on the verge of man-made famine, as the Israeli military has embarked on unparalleled and catastrophic levels of infrastructural destruction and agricultural damage, and the systematic targeting of life-sustaining civilian structures, including hospitals and healthcare facilities, food-providing facilities, schools, universities, religious and cultural heritage sites, and homes. In a state of what also Dr. Hassan Abu Sita has described, they have essentially created a biosphere of genocide. In fact, as early as 19 October 2023, UN experts warned that the campaign by Israel by that time demonstrated clear risk of genocide against the Palestinian people, while in November another UN statement warned also that Israel's actions by that time pointed to a genocide in the making, while genocide scholars also by that time had called Israel's military campaign in Gaza a textbook case of genocide. 2 months later, on 11 and 12 January 2024, the International Court of Justice held public hearings on the request for the indication of provisional measures submitted by South Africa in the case concerning the application of the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide in the Gaza Strip, a case that has received support from more than 50 states worldwide. So this ruling, in fact, there have been 3 orders for provisional measures since that original ruling in January. But alongside this ruling, alongside with the global mobilization movement, had since started to have a slow but visible effect on the international arms transfers to Israel. In fact, in the months following that, there have been several states that had taken steps to suspend export licenses and hold military exports to Israel, either for specific weapons or for all. In late February 2024, UN experts under the remit of the Office of the High Commissioner of Human Rights stated unequivocally that any transfer of weapons or ammunition to Israel that would be used in Gaza is likely to violate international humanitarian law and must cease immediately, adding that states must accordingly refrain from transferring any weapons or ammunition or parts of them if it is expected, given the facts or past patterns of behavior, that they would be used to violate international law. So this statement has been since repeatedly has since been repeated several times by UN experts and other bodies. Like I said in the beginning, we collaborated with the Berlin-based Lawyers Collective in order to support an urgent application to the German government on behalf of Palestinians in Gaza to hold all exports of war weapons to Israel. It was filed on the 5th of April 2024. It was actually the second such urgent application. It was followed by a third by the European Center for Constitutional and Human Rights in collaboration with Al-Haq and Al-Mezan and other organizations in Palestine. For this purpose, we studied publicly available information on past, current, and potential future export license deliveries of weapons and military equipment from Germany to Israel, which we compiled in a report. This report, which is available in English and German on our website, as well as there is an introduction and summary that's also available in Arabic, attempts to bring together this information on arms exports from Germany to Israel in a comprehensive manner. Before going into more the details of our findings, I want to share a few things regarding the availability of information online and publicly. Because even though efforts have been made in the past decades to create a more transparent policy on documenting international arms imports and exports, official data published by states is still limited, very limited in scope, rendering it difficult to form a comprehensive picture on the actual arms trade. And of course, now we are talking about the so-called legal arms trade. While it is easier to access information on the authorization of exports, what we call most of the time arms export licenses, official information on actual exports is much scarcer and more inaccessible. Actual exports occur when the already approved for export military article has been delivered or is en route to the recipient state. Export licenses do not always correspond to actual exports in a given year for a number of reasons. For example, the actual export may take place in a different calendar year or sometimes not take place at all. Most of the time they do, of course, take place, but they can be in very different years. Information on arms export licenses, of course, nonetheless are very important. It's very important information because apart from the fact that a significant part of the arms approved for export do actually get delivered, such information also shows the willingness of governments of exporting states to equip repressive regimes, and of course in this case Israel. In light of the scarcity of official information, there is a number of independent monitoring institutes, UN database, as well as other research initiatives that provide insights on arms deliveries taking place annually. Over the course of our investigation, we consulted a variety of sources, including official governmental reports, EU reports, data from the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, which I will call with its abbreviation CIPRI from now on, but it's one of the main monitoring organizations, independent monitoring institutes that provide significant, insightful information about the arms deliveries, and other as well as parliamentary inquiries and other sources. So, according to CIPRI, in 2023, Germany was the second largest supplier of major conventional arms to Israel, responsible for 47% of Israel's total imports, following the US at 53%. Now, CIPRI does not, like I said, is not a governmental body. It doesn't have access to information any more than any of us would have access to information, so they only use open source information in order to document their the arms trade, and they have an arms transfers database that is called. So when we say they cover major conventional weapons, this means that also it is not an exhaustive list of weapons that they track, right? So for example, they don't track the delivery of ammunition of a caliber of a size of less than 100 millimeters. And there are many other things that they don't track, which means, again, it is not an exhaustive list, but it provides some insights, specifically as it comes to documenting and understanding trends, global trends in arms trade. And this is also why we speak more in percentages in the CIPRI information, less so with actual values. So this percentage of 47% for 2023 included the delivery of two missile corvettes, frigates, warships, that they are called, they are of the type SAR-6, the Israeli name, as well as engines for tanks and other military vehicles and underwater missiles. However, as we can see here in this graph too, this figure does not appear to be an outlier. Since 2003, which is essentially the start, we studied information on arms exports from Germany to Israel, not only in 2023 and beginning of 2024, but we went back 2 decades for various reasons, also for understanding better what type of supply relationships they exist between Germany and Israel, but also, of course, as I mentioned earlier, because past authorized licenses are not less important many times because they may have not been completed. So, for example, the delivery may be pending. So here, in all the graphs that I will show you, you will see that we have actually worked on understanding the landscape of German arms exports to Israel over the past 2 decades or so. So since 2003, Germany has been consistently ranking second and sometimes first at the share of total imports of major conventional weapons by Israel, as documented by CIPRI. Over the period between 2019 and 2023, Germany's share was 30%, second after the US at 69%. And I mention that also because according to CIPRI's methodology itself, it makes better sense according to understand the data if one also sees them over a certain period of time. Now, if we now we're regarding the official information from the German government that we studied, all the official governmental reports. The German government is drafting and publishing each year a report on military exports. So since 2003, Germany has authorized 4,427 individual arms export licenses to Israel with a value of approximately 3.3 billion euro. For comparison, over the same period, and of course, despite the ongoing Israeli occupation as well as major military assaults on Gaza over the years and questions over the past 2 decades, only 54 export licenses were rejected with a value of 8.1 million euro, marking an approval rate of 99.75%. So 4,427 licenses were approved, 54 licenses were rejected. Now this, of course, if we don't know exactly whether it is routine to approve a license or not, this number doesn't really tell us much, but according to their own policy on exports, so the German government is proud to have what they call a restrictive arms exports policy. And this policy specifically, it states in their website that specifically when it comes to states that don't fall in the category of EU states, NATO states, or NATO equivalent states, Israel does not fall under any of those categories. Actually, approval is not the norm, it's the other way around, right? So when we see an approval rate of 99.75%, this already speaks about the enormous amount of military support that has sustained, like I said, enormous violence in Gaza, and it's not, it's very significant in terms of arming and equipping the Israeli military. Between 2003 and 2018 that we see in this graph, I'm sorry, there is something with the aspect ratio and some things are hidden, but on our website and our report we also have all those graphs that you can see later. So data after 2018 is redacted on official reports, but the Germany designated subsector of war weapons, Kriegswaffen in German, worth more than 1.1 billion euro were exported from Germany to Israel. So this is information about actual exports and not arms export licenses. But this also brings us to a very significant and deeply problematic issue, which is essentially the nature and double standards of Germany's dual licensing system that divides military exports into war weapons or Kriegswaffen and other military equipment or sonstige Rüstungsgüter. Now, according to the War Weapons Control Act, war weapons are defined as objects, quote, objects, materials and organisms capable of causing destruction or damage to persons or objects and capable of being used as the means of inflicting force in the course of armed conflict between states, end quote. Now, military products classified as war weapons are listed in the war weapons list, which is the Kriegswaffenliste. The export for articles that are classified as war weapons are actually subject to a more strict licensing process, so they require 2 licenses instead of 1. Whereas the articles that are not classified as war weapons but are classified as sonstige Rüstungsgüter, other military equipment, are governed by another act, which is the Foreign Trade and Payments Act and Ordinance, and are only subject to 1 license from the German government. However, here is the question of what is classified as a war weapon or not, because we are, of course, talking about the general category of military exports, right? And this is where the deeply problematic nature of that division comes, because, in fact, in the war weapons list, an article is classified as war weapon mostly when it's a full weapon system. So that means that a lot of components or parts of weapons or weapon systems are not actually classified as war weapons, but rather as other military equipment. A 2005 report by Oxfam International and Berlin Information Center for Transatlantic Security, so already 20 years ago, they highlighted how this dual legal structure, alongside other factors, encourages a sort of double standards, of course, where components are treated as armament light in the export licensing process compared to entire arms systems, despite the fact that, of course, in general, weapons are only the sum of their components and their parts, and there is no weapon that can function without any components. So components are equally destructive and equally necessary for any operation, military operation, as are full weapon systems. Now, this distinction is also according again to the same researchers from the Berlin Information Center for Transatlantic Security, who have done a lot of work on this issue, and there is a very good report, this report that I mentioned, that is called Made in Germany, the Forgotten Arms Transfers inside the components, the Forgotten Arms Transfers. They were actually saying also that by that time, for example, again, 2005, almost 20 years ago, the vast majority of German arms exports in general consisted of components. So at that time, I think 2005, I don't remember exactly the percentages, but it was something between 50% and 75% of German arms exports in general that consisted of parts of components that then don't fall under the war weapons list. And it also has evolved into such a sort of dual licensing system, and that also, according to that report again, and other researchers who have done research on that subject, it is not only something that the German government takes advantage of in terms of being more lenient and being able to authorize exports while seemingly making it less so, but it is also something that has been reported that also arms manufacturing companies take advantage of. So sometimes they would downgrade their equipment in order to fit that category of component and not full weapon systems, and then components would be assembled again in the countries of origin, right? Or they would sell them separately, etc., etc. So it is indeed a very problematic distinction, and in fact, of course, it's enshrined in legislation at the moment. And I'm not a lawyer, but it strikes me how it has been sort of going on for such a long time without a lot of scrutiny. And in relation to what we are currently discussing, also, it is very important to note that this is exactly the distinction that was the dual legal distinction between war weapons and other military equipment that was instrumentalized by the Defense Council of Germany at the ICJ in the case that was brought forward by Nicaragua, and there was the public hearings in beginning of April, where they made it seem, because they gave the facts that since October 7th, they said that 98% of the military exports that Germany has authorized to Israel are other military equipment, and 2% are Kriegswaffen. And then they gave examples of other military equipment and made it seem as if this 98%, which I will tell you later how much it was, it's approximately 300 million euro, right? It made it seem as if these are helmets, binoculars, and other protective equipment, which could not be further away from the truth. Of course, it's a very misleading statement that also, again, was used specifically to downgrade their support, military support to Israel, even though there are also very public statements in relation from officials in Germany where they were publicly stating that they were actually delivering weapons and equipment. So yeah, this is something that we can perhaps get back to it after, but again, this statement of where they try to downplay that support at the ICJ was in fact very misleading, and I think there is a lot of work that can be done to push towards that distinction. So in relation to 2023 itself, we saw that in 2023, 280 individual export licenses for military equipment from Israel were authorized, with a total value of approximately 326.5 million euro. This is according to the German government. This marks a tenfold increase from 2022, which you can see here. The green is the 2023, 2022 is next to it, where the total value of approved licenses amounted to 32.3 million euros, so that was a tenfold increase from that. And the largest volume of these licenses, in fact 75%, was authorized in the last 3 months of 2023, so in October, November and December. So as you can see also in this graph here, which is 2003 starts somewhere behind me, and 2023 is the green, the value of approved arms export licenses to Israel in 2023 constitutes the fourth largest in the last 2 decades. But if we were to exclude licenses for large warships, submarines and corvettes, 2023 represents in fact the largest in terms of volume of arms export licenses in the last 20 years. Now, exclude submarines and corvettes not because they are less destructive or less dangerous weapons, just because they are entire weapon systems, and they are of course more expensive items and may distort some of the data. But so everything that we see here says that military equipment, of course including war weapons and other military equipment, excluding these large warships, 2023 was actually the largest. As of March 2024, and despite the ICJ having by that time issued twice provisional orders demanding Israel to take actions to prevent the genocide of the Palestinian people, the German government continued to authorize export licenses for military equipment and war weapons. From 1 January up to 5th March 2024, it was approximately 10 million euro that was authorized. And of course, actually we do know that also after that, the German government is continuing to authorize export licenses for other military equipment, specifically, which again, I'm saying that because it doesn't, I will come back to it. They haven't authorized, to our knowledge yet, since February, any license for war weapons yet, or at least according to the information we had maybe a month ago. But they are continuing to authorize licenses for other military equipment. Yeah. So regarding the type of military equipment that the German government has been supplying to Israel, in general, we know that the individual export licenses that were authorized in 2023, the majority of which in the last 3 months of the year, include a large number of permits for the export of wheeled and trucked military vehicles, military technology, and military electronics. Here you can see these are categories of the so-called military list, and all the products that fall under military equipment category, regardless of whether they are war weapons or other military equipment, they are classified in different categories according to this military list, which is also common across the EU. The military list positions of bombs, torpedoes, rockets, missiles, other explosive devices and charges, and to a smaller extent of ammunition, explosive and fuels, as well as large caliber weapons and small firearms, were also included in the export authorizations. The German designated subsector of war weapons amounted to 20 million euro. This included, amongst other, licenses for 3,000 portable anti-tank weapons, 500,000 rounds of ammunition for machine, submachine guns or fully or semi-automatic rifles, as well as ignition and propelling charges for ammunition and other types of weapons. The portable anti-tank weapons authorized for export are likely to be the RJW-19, known as Matador, jointly developed by Germany, Israel and Singapore. The Matador has been used by the Israeli army since so-called Operation Cast Lead in 2009. And during Israel's ongoing military assault in Gaza, Matadors used by Israeli soldiers has been documented on several occasions, including against Palestinian homes in Khan Yunis in southern Gaza. This is just one example where we can see that anti-tank weapon being used by Israeli soldiers. Now, this is information we got from the governmental reports. According to CIPRI's arms transfer database, which CIPRI, as I mentioned in the beginning, tracks actual deliveries, whereas the information I gave now in relation to the governmental data talks about arms export licenses. So they do not necessarily correspond. But according to the arms transfer database, in 2023, CIPRI documented exports of the following major conventional weapons: the 2 SAR-6 class corvettes that I mentioned earlier, 10 diesel engines for armored vehicles of the type ATAN and APC and IFV, 50 diesel engines for Merkava 4 tanks and other armored vehicles, and 10 torpedoes, which are underwater missiles, for Israel's German manufactured Dolphin submarines. These corvettes, approximately 1/3 of whose cost was actually subsidized by the German government, so it was not only sold, it was also co-financed to an extent, have been operational for the first time during Israel's ongoing military assault on Gaza, actively involved in strikes offshore. This is, as we can see also from a video here. Additionally, the corvettes, of course, reinforce the Israeli Navy's arsenal, as the latter is imposing a total naval blockade of Gaza. The Merkava 4 tank, which is powered by German-made components. The Merkava tank is very known to be one of the main tanks of the Israeli army, and has long been considered quote-unquote integral to Israel's military operations, while in the context of the ongoing ground invasion of Gaza, it has been characterized as, quote, Israel's main asset, unquote. Since 2023, there is, of course, extensive documentation of the use of tanks in targeting civilians and in indiscriminate attacks and besiegement of critical infrastructure. Extensive documentation, of course, in Gaza and also in South Lebanon, against journalists, against medical personnel, against aid convoys. Of course, it is known here that it is a ground invasion, so of course armored vehicles play a very important role. We have also, for example, also documented at Forensic Architecture recently how tanks actually fired ammunition that killed 6-year-old Hind Rajab and her cousin and her family members. And regarding the other armored personnel carriers that CIPRI documented the diesel engines for, like Number APC and Daytona APC, all of these have also been documented as being active in the current operation. Additionally, tanks alongside tractors and other military vehicles have been used to systematically uproot farms and agricultural land in Gaza in a deliberate act of ecocide, which is a critical dimension of Israel's ongoing genocidal campaign. At FA, we recently published an investigation into Israel's ecocidal practices in Gaza that revealed that indeed, as of March 2024, of the agricultural areas targeted, approximately 40% of the land in Gaza previously used for food production had been destroyed. Now, this is of course outdated data by the time because it regarded up to March 2024, but it gives an insight about the tragic loss of life-sustaining agricultural land. Since 2002, Germany has exported an estimated number of 1,060 diesel engines for these Merkava tanks, as well as other armored personnel carriers. In January 2024, Der Spiegel also reported that the German government was preparing the authorization of the supply of 10,000 rounds of 120mm tank ammunition. As late as 9 April 2024, which was the day of the public hearing of the defense of Germany at the ICJ, we know that this request was still pending and had not been rejected. The indiscriminate use, again, of course, of tank ammunition has been widely documented, and again, like I said before, also against clearly identified journalists in South Lebanon in different cases that have been concluded, of course, to be violations of international humanitarian law. Additionally, in October 2023, Germany authorized Israel to use 2 of the 5 Heron TP combat drones that they had leased. Again, of course, there are several documentations that in past Israeli offensives in Gaza, the Israeli army has used drones not only in surveillance and target acquisition, but also for attacking civilians with missiles. And this is also something that has been documented in the current offensive and against also journalists as well as medical staff, the use of drones in general. And this is also another example where the Legal Council of Germany at the ICJ attempted to downplay their role, where they made it seem that them providing these drones was the natural end of a leasing agreement, because these drones were actually lent by the Israeli military manufacturing company that is producing them by German soldiers so that they can train. And at the ICJ, they made it seem as if they only got back to Israel because the German soldiers that were on the ground had to leave, whereas in fact it was a deliberate act of support. As we can see here from Minister Pistorius, a few days after the 7th of October, it was one of the main means of military support that they could do quickly and effectively. So it was not a side effect. It was not a kind of. It was a deliberate act of support. So here we can see the different data that we collected over the past 20 years. Here we can see it according to. I will just say a few words now of what we can see in terms of patterns, not only now but also in the past 20 years of Germany's military support to Israel. We can see how here they are classified into the different categories. A significant share in the total value of the almost 3.3 billion worth of euro of arms approved over the period in question corresponds to this military list position 9, which is the blue here, that covers naval vessels of war and components thereof, and covers the export during that period of 6 warships, which are the 2 Dolphin submarines that are reportedly also equipped, have the potential for nuclear, have also nuclear capabilities. Not that they were delivered like that, but they have that possibility. And 4 missile corvettes. And this also speaks to the fact that, in fact, Israel's Navy's arsenal has been predominantly been supplied by German manufacturing companies. So not these submarines are some of them submarines that have been supplied. There is one submarine that is pending. One license has been approved was approved in 2023. There is a pending license that will likely be approved in 2024, and there was a new order for new submarines to be completed by 2030. Yeah. The second largest volume in terms of value of approved arms export licenses between 2003 and 2022 is attributed to the military list position of 6, which corresponds to ground vehicles and components, namely tanks, other armored vehicles and components thereof. While additional positions of interest approved for export over the past 20 years include Military List 4, Military List 3, and Military List 1, which are small firearms, ammunition and fuse-setting devices, and bombs, torpedoes, rockets, and other explosive devices. In fact, the data analysis that we conducted over this information showed that in the majority of these positions, the approved arms exports increased significantly in the years after Israel's major military assaults in Gaza. So not only in general, arms exports increased after specific operations, so-called operations on Gaza. Since 2003, there have been at least five major operations on Gaza, but specific items that have been documented to have been used by the Israeli forces, licenses for those specific weapons have seen an increase the following year after these offensives. For example, here we can see the military list 6, which is ground vehicles and components, where there have been different increases throughout the 2 decades, but we all clearly see an increase in 2013, for example, a year after major military assault on Gaza. While this position, which is bombs, torpedoes, rockets, missiles, and other explosive devices, we also see a very sharp increase in 2013 and 2015. So it is again the years after 2 operations that where thousands of Palestinian people were killed, civilian infrastructure was completely destroyed. In fact, the 2012 was the so-called Operation Pillar of Defense, whereas 2014 was the so-called Operation Protective Edge. And again, we can see the specific export licenses for specific categories that were used in these offensives to increase the year following it. Here again, we have a similar pattern, but we can also see an increase in 2019, a significant increase. This is a category that regards ammunition and fuse-setting devices. And in fact, 2019 is when the Great March of Return protests ended, and they started in 2018, where Israeli forces killed at least 214 Palestinians, including 46 children, and injured thousands of people. Acts that, according to the Human Rights Council, could amount to war crimes or crimes against humanity. And we see the sharp increase in ammunition and fuse-setting devices in 2019, but we also see a sharp increase in this category that corresponds to essentially small firearms. And we know that almost 60%, we know that a large part, the vast majority of people who were killed by the Israeli forces at and around the border fence, in fact, suffered fatal injuries from the use of live ammunition from such firearms. So the majority of people were actually killed from snipers who used such firearms, for which we see there is a sharp increase by the German government in supplying such firearms or ammunition the year after that the Great March of Return. Okay, I think I will stop here, yeah, because maybe I went over time also. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dimitra, for these amazing infos and these reports. I will give the word over to Claudio now. Claudio, please.
Yes. Thank you all, and thank Dimitra for the very insightful explanation of the situation with the weapon export. As she mentioned before, the first urgent proceeding against weapon delivery in June was rejected by the court with the allegation that were not effective war weapons delivered. It was very well explained. The newest report of forensics quote also an old Oxfam report, including in the war material also the components and the problem of the components and how the components are not tracked and not included in the weapons licenses. One thing I feel like to add is so the cooperation between Germany and Israel is actually not only in one way, but it's in both ways. There is a point to make in this. The fact that Germany is not only selling weapons to Israel, but also buying weapons. There is a big deal now about the Arrow 3 missile system, anti-missile system, and with 3.6 billions of euros or dollars, so the relationship between Germany and Israel and the weapon. Sorry? Okay, the situation in the German-Israeli relationship and in weapon delivery is both sides. As we have to say before all, and secondly, so Israel is not dependent on Germany like it is Ukraine, for instance, about German, US, and European Union weapons delivery, because it's itself an exporting country of systems. You know about the entity of the big entity of the Elbit, Rafael, and big state companies, Israeli state companies that make Israel's war machine a big startup with a worldwide export. And weapons, they are tested now and since decades on Palestinians. About the weapons. About the weapons, Dimitra was talking about what is under the radar is the production of vessels and submarines. These submarines are produced in Kiel, mostly by the ThyssenKrupp Marine. We will talk at the end also about Kiel. Kiel will be in Kiel at the end of the summer, in beginning of September. There will be a protest camp. I will tell you more about that. It's an action camp. We are co-organizing as a campaign, Stop Arming Israel. I'm also part of I'm contributing also in the Rheinmetall and Waffen network. I want to tell you two words before going into my point, integrating the vision given by Dimitra. I want to tell you two words: who I am and why I'm talking. As I was announced, I'm part of the Stop Arming Israel campaign. And I have an experience as a media activist since the beginning of the 2000s in Italy. The movement, that time we were in the anti-war movement, Iraqi war. As a media activist, I have an experience in media analysis. We were trying to analyze how the power is shaping the media landscape, and then the collective mind on issues like war, peace, and every kind of external and internal war. This will be my topic. We are now in an open debate also in our campaign. What does it mean? Stop arming Israel. Stop arming Israel. So producing submarines and corvette with taxpayers' money. Let's say we are also to remember. Is one part of it, but so we are in front of an issue. So what is also arming Israel? We understand how the fact that scandalized about the profit made with weapons against profit made with the death. Is one thing, is the basic point, but we have also to understand that there is another dimension of weapon, and this dimension I want to talk to you about. I will tell you something maybe familiar sometimes, or something familiar but in a different frame, about what is InfoWar and narrative as cognitive warfare domain. Many of us have the feeling of living in a parallel reality with a part of the society who seems to not to see the world. How do we see? Many are talking also about cognitive dissonances. There are some elements making us understand that the social mind is busy with the fight. Is even actually the battlefield, and I want to mention you something I found very interesting. Some years ago already, I bumped into NATO Innovation Hub website. It's very innocent. It's talking about cognitive warfare. I read you the definition of what is cognitive warfare, and then we go for some application of what is the cognitive warfare. Cognitive warfare understand the mind as a battle space and a contested domain. Its objective is to sow dissonance, instigate conflictive narratives, polarize opinion, and radicalize groups. Cognitive warfare can motivate people to act in ways that can disrupt or fragment an otherwise cohesive society. Ensuing disorder can influence decision-making, change ideologies, and generate distrust among allies. The aim of the one who are of leading this laboratory is securing the cognitive domain against attacks of external enemies. NATO is looking for new technologies and measures that can combat the threats of attacks on mind. as a first example of cognitive dissonance we are confronted in every moment in the last months, in the last 9 months, is the first example can come to our mind is the fact that the colonial annihilation war, the bombing of hospitals, is described as the right to existence, or the right to defend itself of a state from an attack of terrorists. Is that what this is suggesting is that is created from is institutionally created a situation in which the state prepares for war against an external enemy, but also against a part of home population. So this kind of political reactionary laboratory we have experienced, and we have experienced some years ago, already some years ago, and before obviously before the starting of the war on Gaza. It started with the pandemic. So during the pandemic, we had experienced the first time in which, not for the first time in the history, but in the last years, a strong acceleration in creating successfully what is called opinion corridors, and administrating ban to analysis and critics, defaming radically the counter-information. The counter-information as the basis of any kind of social opposition, and all the revolutionary movement of the future, the past, the present, and the future, are based on an alternative analysis of the reality. What I remind in my childhood, I'm born in Italy. Maybe you remember something like the strategy of tension, and the strategy of tension was by the revolutionary left. Counter-information was kind of prevented to be successful. There was the state with the NATO, with the support of the NATO alliance, leading an anti-communist war on the population in Italy, making bomb attacks and attributing them to the left. There was a counter-information in that time, being able to show the public, which is what is not the case, and a big mass movement was created against this reactionary attempt to make Italy like Greece, and was in the late 60s and early 70s. This is the point of the counter-information. What happened from the pandemic, people are trying to speak up. It was not easy to talk about that 2 years ago, but now we can start even to make a bit of history of that moment. And we realize Sorry, can you change the mics?
Yes. Maybe this is a mic here.
Yeah, is it better?
Yes.
Okay, so we are in front of in this situation was put a very radical discredit on the counter information, together with the isolation of intellectuals, with the dismissal of professors. The last example was quoted by Helena at the beginning when she told about Ali Abu Nima was even prevented to talk. So we are in front of a real war of information, and we have to think how to arm ourselves. The best thing to do is to try to think together and to try to feel the power of thinking together against the thoughts they are from the power instilled in the society. So people with the wrong opinion are isolated and fighting the enemy of democracy. Fighting the enemy of democracy is made beyond the principle of democracy. So it's like it was. It is quoted by an author I had the chance to know in depth because I was translating his work. It's Mahmoud Mamdani. He's remembering how in the Holy Inquisition, in the time of the Holy Inquisition, the moral principle were not to be applied to the heretics, and he added also with the colonized people. So in the Christian Europe, in the Christian Europe, there is an history in persecuting minorities, and one is obviously the persecution of the Jews. And one point in this info war and in this cognitive war we are facing is also concerning the fake struggle against anti-Semitism. This is a point I feel like very strategic in our political present in the community fighting today against the Gaza genocide, but not as the last as an event part of 76 years of expropriation and part of the whole colonial history of the West. And so it's important that we focus also in this aspect of the cognitive war. When we shout stop the genocide and we are confronted with an accusation of anti-Semitism, because we have to understand where this accusation is coming and how is working in order also to be neutralized, and how these weapons are used against us. So one of these points is the not legally binding. So this point is about the not legally binding working definition on anti-Semitism, also known of the name of the fake international institution called IHRA, International Holocaust Remembrance Alliance. It was also mentioned here the last event in the last event of the Palästina Kongress. And how this fake definition of anti-Semitism is leading, this fake struggle against anti-Semitism is actually used to as a weapon, as a war against a part of the population, just like the pogroms were used in the history of Europe and in Russia to split the power of the oppressed people and of the working class. in pre-revolutionary Russia. We are not in pre-revolutionary times, probably, but we have to understand how the narrative, how this narrative of the anti-Semitism is used actually as a racist campaign to isolate, so anti-Muslim and anti-Arab campaign. Actually creating the new, this is the real new anti-Semitism we are experiencing now. This, in order also to arm ourselves against these implementations. The implementation is that the police is empowered to censorship, police brutality, and the executive is empowered to take to the politics. So politics, executive, and police are working together beyond the law and making accomplished facts, like it was the experience of Palästina Congress, but we have a long list of this kind of persecution. Going to the root of this, I think is strategic. Important also, the point on the German-Israel relationship. So the question of tonight is obviously not based on the historic responsibility of Germany for what Nazi Germany did during the 20th century. But it's response of a colonial interest. So we see how Germany wants to belong to the big powers, and the power politics of Germany is based on the support to the Zionist project. The Zionist project. Zionist project, which actually is not obviously is abusively as our comrades and as our comrades working with us very strictly I'm mentioning Jewish Voice, the Jewish Bund and all the anti-Zionist Jews. They reject the identification between the Zionist project and the Jewish people, highlighting the fact that the Zionism and anti-Semitism, they are not in contradiction in all the history. And one evidence of the fact that Germany is not acting to protect, as it is said, to protect the Jewish life, is that actually the anti-Zionist Jews are subject to persecution from the same part who are alleging to be fighting anti-Semitism. I want to suggest you a very interesting interview with Eyal Weizman, which is the founder of forensic architecture, and he's you can find it under this word. Once again, Germany defines who is a Jew. Is quite enlightening. So back to weapons. Since Ukraine war, we are experiencing a shift, a shift in the perception, and a very divided consciousness also inside the potential opposition movement. This is part also obviously of propaganda campaign, but also about this kind of shaping the collective mind, which from above, which I mentioned before. So we see like a big preparation for war, defending the democratic values and arming Germany. How can be the Kriegstüchtigkeit, so to be readiness to war is the motto, and we are confronted with we have been confronted with the weakness of the anti-war movement, which was divided on moral issues like who is the aggressor, who is killing who, and we don't understand the political point, the position. We said neither nor, so let's say Putin or NATO. In other point, also in the such kind of positioning is also in the war on Gaza is much more problematic. But what we see in the war, in this war preparation is how is hidden the class interest and the historical process of building the state of war. We can talk about, and it's very needed. It is very needed. I would say also to talk about how Western neoliberal authoritarianism is actually covering a big crisis through this war. To the work with the war preparation. I suggest you an Italian author, a Marxist economist, Emiliano Brancaccio, talking about how the current war enthusiasm actually is to be related to the crisis of the West. Of a big crisis of the West. So the West is the collective West is investing in nationalism and fear to make the society accept less social expenditure, less redistribution, and more concentration of wealth in less hands. This is also another important aspect. And to hide also the class consciousness of the colonial power. Maybe you remember, maybe you have present how the name of the operation against the Houthi in the Red Sea is called the Prosperity Guardian. So it's very openly saying our value, our interest. This is the slogan, and with the colonial class. Very conscious of own class interest. So important to understand complicities, understand where is coming the complicity. One thing with the campaign Stop Arming Israel, our attention was directed to the trade unions. The trade unions, they are playing an important role. They could play an important role, and they are playing an important role, but on the wrong side. The IG Metall, I want to mention you the IG Metall BDSV position paper of February, where this is to secure sovereignty and resilience, translated from Germany. So in the middle of a genocide, and after 2 years of massacre in Ukraine, there is which are fueled with German weapons, as we know. So the German IG Metall, the biggest trade union in Germany, is makes this joint declaration with the biggest armament industry association of Germany, asking for more investment in innovation for the sake of competitivity of the German weapon industry. So, what an example of the main enemy is in our land. Obviously, the main enemy is not the trade union. We know that in the trade union there is an opposition. That there is from the base of the trade union there are trade unionists organizing themselves. We are in contact with Gewerkschafter für Gaza, trade unionists for Palestine, and is following the last months there were a very consistent exchange with the Italian dock workers, with the CALP, the dock workers of Genova, making active stopping wars in harbors, and symbolically but still very consistently, in the perspective of learning from these bad practices, even though in Germany the political strike is very difficult, but it's a very important point in working and empowering the opposition of the comrades inside the trade unions. We are planning also together with some of the comrades of the trade unions. We are planning also a campaign to expose the partnership of DGB with Histadrut. Histadrut, maybe you know, Histadrut is apparently a trade union, but it's not. Is actually the historical actors of the ethnic, racial segregation of the working class in Israel. So defending the Jewish work against the Arab work. They started in the 20s making strikes against the Palestinian workers, boycotting and making an apparent class struggle against the employer using Arab workforce, and so on until today. Until today, they are the core of, through the 48 Nakba. They are the core of the Zionist state, which is very interesting. Is yet to be exposed because the DGB, this DGB partnership is the core of the German Zionist state of reason of state. And I want to make the last point, which is very relevant also in Stop Arming Israel, and it's our relationship with our connection with the climate just movement. The climate just movement plays also an important role in this in the struggle for an anti-colonial struggle. We have among us comrades of Klima for Palestina. I don't know if some of them are here. They maintain that climate justice is also class struggle and struggle against colonial injustice. Being the world ruled by a class that has no plan for the future except of maintaining own privileges, also at cost of the end of the life on the planet Earth. And I go to the end to say that so we have so the last word I want to say, getting to the beginning, is that the denial of the ongoing genocide and ethnic cleansing in Palestine is then resuming out of reasons, out of economic reasons, and with all the weapon delivery we described, we were well described by Dimitra, and ideological interest. I want to close with this point, a final victory of the Zionist project in the 76 years in the war on Palestine would become a justification for the whole history of colonialism, for the logic of the confirmation of the logic of white supremacy, the land grab, or the annihilation of the other, incompatible with Western values. So that's to say that Palestine is not a national. It's not a national question, but a question about the world we want to live in.
Great, thank you so much, Claudio, for these great insights also into what this can mean in practice.